Hey friends, I'm Gio, and welcome to my channel. I'm glad you stopped by Loud and Proud L3Q. This story's location was suggested by Greg Rowlands, 9632, about 2 months ago. Thanks for your patience, Greg. It takes time to put a story together. I've never been to Tasmania, so hopefully I got it right. Give Copilot credit for the good things. He's amazing at research. Any mistakes? I'll take credit for those. Sometimes it's hard translating facts into a story. Please enjoy. It was 4 in the afternoon on a Friday in Hobart, Tasmania. Late September and spring was already beginning to bloom. Today was the final high school game of the season. Guildford Young College against the Hutchins School, rivals whose history stretched across every sport, especially soccer. The stand smelled like popcorn, sausage rolls, and old socks. In other words, high school. I was only there for my younger cousin, Hazel. Her dance troupe was performing their award-winning routine between the first half and second half of the final game of the season. It was a big deal. They'd just won the Dance Expo Regional Division, and it let the school show off a little. I'm also an alum of Guildford, but I graduated 3 years back. Though it's September, the air held August's chill. I wore my best denim jacket, the one with the embroidered frog and the chalky milk stain I pretend is intentional. The oval was full. They'd brought out all the portable bleachers from storage, and those were completely chock-a-block with people. He dropped in beside me like he belonged there. Brassy hair, dark honey eyes, and a black hoodie that said, "I'm cold, but emotionally available." Strong cheekbones, dark stubble on his chin. He opened his pack, pulled out a lunch container, and offered me a hot meat pie. "I'm starving, and it's rude to eat in front of a mate you're trying to impress. Want to share?" I took it. We chewed in silence, the crowd roaring around us like a broken washing machine. "You here for the game?" he asked at last. "Not really," I said. "My cousin's part of the dance troupe. I'm supporting family." He laughed, loud, unapologetic, like someone who'd never been told to tone it down. "Same. My brother's a striker. I'm the disappointment." I turned to look at him. "You don't seem disappointing." He shook his head. "I'm not the kind who scores goals." The sun dipped behind the scoreboard, casting gold across his cheekbones. I wanted to touch them. Instead, I offered him my milk-stained sleeve. "You can wipe your fingers here. It's already ruined." He did, slowly, reverently, like the chalky milk stain was sacred. First half ended. The teams ran off the oval and confer with the coaches. The dance troupe stood in position. Hazel was third from the end. The music began. My cousin danced like joy was a birthright. The guy beside me clapped louder than anyone. I leaned into him without thinking. He didn't move away. "I'm Lachlan," I said. "Mac," he replied, "like the truck or the cheese." "Or the kiss," I said, before I could stop myself. He blinked, then smiled. "You're bold." "I'm tired of waiting." The second half started. We didn't watch. We shared the rest of the meat pie, fingers brushing like a secret handshake. When the crowd stood for a goal, we stayed seated, and when the sun finally set behind the stands, Mac kissed me, soft, warm, like fleece and milk and home. Chapter 2. The crowd's chatter rose and fell in uneven waves, voices wobbling like a kite in the wind. I sat with a cold can of Coca-Cola, the fizz sharp and sweet, more sugar than bite. Mac nudged me with his shoulder. "You're not even watching the oval," he said. "I'm watching you," I replied, too quickly. He grinned but didn't let me off the hook. "That's the thing, though. Everybody's always waiting for the next game, the next season. Nobody just sits here. Nobody just is. I looked at him, the way his hoodie sagged at the elbows, the way his hair caught the late afternoon light. He wasn't asking for applause or a promise. He was asking for presence. "You're right," I said. "I've spent half my life waiting for something to change. Maybe it's time to stop waiting." Mac raised his can. "To being here, right now." We clinked cans. The crowd roared for a play I didn't see, but for once, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Chapter 3. The final whistle blew, and the crowd spilled down the oval stands like a tide. The air smelled of sweat and Lynx Africa. My cousin was still buzzing from a routine, excitement clinging to her like confetti. Mac and I threaded through the crowd together, shoulder to shoulder. He waved at his brother, the striker, who was mobbed by teammates and parents. Then he turned back to me, as if the noise didn't matter. "Your cousin's a star," he said. "She's been practicing for months to get it right," I replied. "She's not wrong." We found Hazel near the canteen, clutching a fizzy drink and grinning like she'd won the lottery. She spotted me and squealed, "Locke, you actually stayed." "Stayed and survived," I said. "This is Mac. He clapped louder than anyone." Hazel gave him a once-over, then nodded approvingly. "Good taste in meat pies?" "Excellent," Mac said, deadpan. She laughed, and for a moment the three of us stood in the glow of the oval lights, the game forgotten. The cousin's joy, Mac's quiet grin, my own relief. It all felt like motion, like change. I realized I wasn't just present for the kiss or the meat pie. I was present for this family, laughter, the messy sidelines of a Friday night. Mac nudged me. "See, being here isn't so bad." I smiled. "It's better than waiting." Chapter 4. The floodlights over the oval flickered off one by one, leaving the car park in a soft blue haze. Hazel had already vanished into a crowd of dancers, glitter trailing behind her, like breadcrumbs. Mac and I lingered near the canteen, each holding a paper cup of hot chalky. The steam curled into the air, sweet and heavy. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. "So, do you disappear now? Back to your cousin's world?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I'm still here." He smiled, the kind that made his hoodie look less like armor and more like invitation. "Good, because I was thinking, there is a takeaway down the street. Devil's Kitchen, sticky booths, decent chips, good burgers. Want to come?" The question hung between us, heavier than the crowd noise, lighter than the steam. It wasn't just chips. It was a choice. Stay present or slip back into waiting. I took a sip of hot chalky. Too sweet, too warm. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." Mac grinned, wide and unapologetic. Then it settled. "Tonight, you're not waiting. You're with me." We tossed our cups into the bin and walked toward the glow of the car park exit. The night opening like a door. Chapter 5. The takeaway smelled like grease and nostalgia. The takeaway sign hummed against the window, casting pink shadows across sticky booths. Max slid into the seat across from me, tossing a menu aside. "Chips?" he asked. "Always," I said, though my stomach was too tight for hunger. The server dropped off a bowl of chips, salt clinging to them like frost. We ate in silence at first, the crunch filling the space where words should have been. I thought about leaving, about saying thanks for the meat pie, thanks for the hot chalky, thanks for the invitation, about slipping back into waiting. Mac caught me staring at the door. "You're debating," he said softly. I laughed, nervous. "Maybe. I don't usually do this." "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I don't want to miss it. Not tonight." The chips cooled between us. The neon hummed. My chest ached with the weight of choice. I leaned forward, elbows on the sticky table. So what happens if I stay? Mac didn't answer with words. He leaned across the booth, kissed me again. Quick, certain, tasting of salt and grease and something sweeter. When he pulled back, he smiled. Then you're here, with me. I exhaled, the debate dissolving like sugar in hot chalky. For once, being present felt easy. Chapter 6. The morning light cut across the kitchen table, turning my toast into a stained glass window of strawberry jam. My phone buzzed against the plate. I opened the email, skimmed the words twice, then a third time. Offer, position, relocation, another city, another life? Mac's hoodie was draped over the chair from last night, smelling faintly of grease and hot chalky. I stared at it, then at the email. My father walked in, coffee mug in hand. "You're up early," he said. "Got an email," I replied, voice too flat. He raised an eyebrow. "Good news?" "Job offer in Melbourne." The words hung between us, heavier than the steam from his mug. He didn't smile. He didn't clap me on the back. He just said, "We'll talk about it." I nodded, thought my chest was already tight. Later, Mac texted, "Congrats, that's huge. You should go." I stared at the screen, jam cooling on the toast, my father's silence, Mac's encouragement, my own pulse racing. The world had shifted overnight. I typed back, "It feels too fast." Mac replied, "Fast isn't bad. Sometimes fast is freedom." I set the phone down, the toast untouched. The job offer wasn't just a career move. It was a door, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to walk through it. Chapter 7. The park smelled of damp leaves and espresso drifting from a nearby cafe. Mac and I walked side by side, takeaway cups warming our hands. "I got more details about the job," I said, watching a child chase pigeons across the path. "Bentley Software Developers, Melbourne office. Starting salary's decent, enough to cover rent and still eat something better than 2-minute noodles." Mac raised his eyebrows. "That's not just decent, that's freedom." I sipped my coffee, bitter and grounding. "My dad doesn't see it that way. He thinks I should stay. Family, tradition, whatever that means." Mac kicked at a pile of leaves, sending them scattering. "Maybe he's scared. People get comfortable with you being here, but you don't owe anyone your presence." I stopped walking, the words heavy. "But what if leaving means losing everything I've built here?" Mac turned to me, hoodie pulled tight against the breeze. "Or what if leaving means finding everything you've been waiting for?" The pigeons scattered again, wings beating against the sky. I thought about salary figures, relocation packages, my father's silence. And then I thought about Mac, standing in the middle of St. David's Park, daring me to imagine more. Chapter 8. The waterfront smelled of salt and vinegar, gulls circling above the fish and chip shop. Mac and I sat on the stone wall, paper parcels warming our laps. "My dad thinks I should stay," I said, breaking a chip in half. "He says family comes first, that leaving Hobart means abandoning everything." Mac chewed thoughtfully, then shrugged. "Maybe he's right. Maybe leaving does mean abandoning something, but it also means choosing yourself." I stared at the dark water, reflections of neon lights rippling across the surface. What if choosing myself means losing him? Mac leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. What if choosing yourself means finding me? The gulls cried overhead, the chips cooling between us. My father's voice echoed in my head, heavy with tradition. Mac's voice cut through, lighter, daring. "You don't have to stay stuck," he said. "Melbourne isn't just a job, it's a chance to breathe, and if you go, maybe I go too." I blinked. You'd leave Hobart? He smiled, bold and unapologetic. Why not? This town's never wanted me, Loud. Maybe it's time I stopped apologizing for being here. The paper crinkled in my hands. The choice wasn't simple. Family, legacy, love, freedom. All wrapped up like chips in grease-stained paper. I stared at Mac, his grin daring me to imagine more. For the first time, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like opening a door. Chapter 9. Salamanca Market, located next to Hobart's waterfront at Salamanca Place, stretched out in a maze of stalls and sandstone warehouses. The air carried the scent of cinnamon, toasted nuts, and sea salt drifting in from the harbor. Crowds pressed shoulder to shoulder, laughter rising above the buskers' guitars. The market buzzed with chatter, buskers strumming guitars, and the smell of cinnamon drifting from a bakery stall. Matt tugged me toward a table stacked with handmade scarves, each brighter than the last. You'd look good in this one, he said, draping a neon green scarf around my neck. I laughed. I'd look like a traffic cone. Exactly, he grinned. Unmissable. We wandered past stalls of carved wood, jars of jam, and baskets of apples. A vendor handed us samples of honey-dipped donuts, still warm. The sugar stuck to my fingers, and Mac leaned in, licking a speck from my knuckle before I could react. Bold, I said, heart racing. Present, he corrected, eyes daring me to argue. We bought a paper bag of donuts and shared them as we walked, icing sugar dusting our jackets. Every stall felt like a stage, every laugh like a rehearsal for something bigger. At the end of the row, beneath the string of market lights, Mac stopped. He brushed sugar from my cheek with his thumb, then kissed me. Soft, certain, tasting of honey and cinnamon. The crowd roared for the buskers' finale, but I barely heard it. For once, the world was quiet, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. In his arms. Chapter 10. The wind at the summit whipped against my jacket, sharp and clean. Below us, Hobart stretched out like a patchwork quilt, the harbor glittering in the late afternoon sun. Mac poured steaming tea from a thermos, the scent of peppermint curling into the cold air. Not bad for a second date, he said, handing me the cup. I laughed. You're setting the bar high. We leaned against the railing, sipping tea, the city spread beneath us. For a moment, everything felt possible. The job offer in Melbourne shimmered like the harbor lights. My father's silence seemed far away. Mac's grin was close, warm, certain. You could have this, he said, nodding toward the horizon. A new city, a new start, and maybe me, if I'm brave enough to follow. I looked at him, the wind tugging at his hoodie, his hair wild against the sky. It sounds perfect. He kissed me then, quick and sure, peppermint lingering between us. The world tilted, and for a heartbeat, I believe it was all settled. Love, freedom, future, us. Chapter 11. The living room smelled faintly of roast lamb, reheated and heavy. My father sat in his armchair, the television muted, his coffee mug balanced on the armrest. You're not seriously considering Melbourne, he said, voice low but firm. I shifted on the couch, the job offer email glowing on my phone. It's a good position. Bentley software developers, solid salary, real growth. He shook his head. Growth isn't everything. Family is. You've got roots here, Lachlan. You don't just walk away from that. The words pressed against my chest, heavier than the silence. Later, outside under the veranda light, Mac leaned against the railing, hoodie pulled tight. He doesn't get it, he said. Leaving isn't betrayal, it's living. I rubbed my hands together, the night air biting. But what if he's right? What if staying is the only way to honor him? Mac stepped closer, his voice softer now. Or what if honoring him means being honest about who you are, about what you want? The veranda creaked beneath us. My father's shadow moved behind the curtain. The lamb sat untouched on the table inside. I wanted to believe leaving was freedom, but the weight of home pressed harder than before. Chapter 12. The jetty was quiet, gulls gone, the smell of salt heavy in the air. A paper parcel of fish and chips sat between us on the bench, untouched, grease soaking through the paper. "My dad doesn't want me to go," I said, voice tight. "He says leaving is betrayal." Max stared at the dark water. "And what do you want?" I hesitated. "I don't know anymore." He turned, eyes sharp. "You do know. You're just scared to say it." The words cut deeper than the wind. "Easy for you to talk about leaving. You don't have a father telling you you're selfish." Mac flinched. Hoodie pulled tighter. "No, I just have a town that tells me I'm too loud, too much. Leaving is survival for me. For you, it's choice." Silence stretched. The chips cooled. My chest ached with the weight of both worlds pressing in. "I can't lose him," I whispered. "And maybe I can't lose you," Max said, softer now. "But if you stay out of fear, then what are we even building?" I didn't answer. The jetty lights flickered. Gulls cried in the distance. The paper parcel sagged, grease staining the bench. For the first time since the stands, I felt empty. No laughter, no warmth, just the sharp edge of choice and the fear that either way, I'd lose something I couldn't replace. Chapter 13. The street was empty, rain tapping against the cobblestones. I sat on the veranda steps of my father's house, a chipped mug of tea cooling in my hands, midnight pressed heavy against the harbor, the air damp and unforgiving. I thought about Mac Marlowe's words, sharp and tender all at once. Leaving isn't betrayal, it's living. I thought about my father's silence, the weight of family expectations. And I thought about myself, caught between them, unable to move. The tea was cold, bitter. I drank it anyway. For the first time, I wondered if being present meant facing the pain instead of running from it. Maybe presence wasn't about choosing Mac or my father. Maybe it was about choosing myself. But the thought hurt. It meant admitting that I couldn't please everyone. It meant risking love, risking family, risking the fragile balance I'd built. I set the mug down on the step, rain dripping into it. My chest ached with emptiness. But beneath it, a flicker of something else. Resolve. Faint, but real. The night didn't give me answers. It gave me silence. And in that silence, I realized I couldn't stay here forever. Chapter 14. The veranda creaked beneath my weight as the first light of dawn spilled across the road. My father stood in the doorway, a steaming coffee in his hand. "I can't stay," I said, voice steady. "I need to take the job. I need to see what's out there." He didn't speak at first, just sipped his coffee, eyes on the horizon. Finally, he nodded. "I don't want to lose you, Lachlan, but I don't want you to lose yourself either. If this is what you need, then go. Just don't forget where home is." The words loosened something in my chest. I stepped forward, hugged him, the smell of coffee and old wool grounding me. Later, at the waterfront, Mac was waiting, hoodie pulled tight, a paper bag of fresh bread in his hands. "You came," he said, relief flickering across his grin. "I'm leaving," I replied. "Melbourne, Bentley Software Developers. But I don't want to leave without you." Mac broke the bread in half, handed me a piece. "Then let's go together. No apologies, no waiting." We ate in silence, the bread warm against the cool air, the harbor shimmered, gulls circling above. I leaned in, kissed him, tasting yeast and salt and something sweeter. For once, the choice didn't feel like loss. It felt like beginning. Chapter 15. 6 months later, Mac and I were living in the South Bank apartments, a glass-fronted tower overlooking Melbourne's Yarra River. From our balcony, the city stretched in every direction, trams rattling below, cafes spilling laughter onto the footpaths, and the skyline glittering like a promise. The apartment itself was modest but high, sunlight pouring through side windows. The apartment smelled of fresh fruit and sunlight. A bowl of grapes, apples, and oranges sat on the table, bright against the pale wood. Mac leaned against the balcony railing, hoodie traded for a collared shirt, watching the city hum below. My father sat in the armchair, a coffee in his hand, eyes scanning the room. "You've made a home here," he said, voice softer than I remembered. I nodded. "It's different, but it's mine." He looked at Mac, then back at me. "And you're happy? Both of you?" Mac grinned, tossing me an apple. I caught it, the weight solid in my hands. "He's happy," Mac said. "We both are." My father sipped his coffee, gaze drifting to the skyline. "Then that's enough." The sliding doors were open, the breeze carrying laughter from the street below. I bit into the apple, sweet and crisp, and for the first time, I felt fully present. Not waiting, not torn, just here. Just present. Max slipped his arm around my shoulders, my father watching with quiet acceptance. The city stretched out before us, alive and restless. 6 months ago, I was stuck in the stands. Now, I was home. Thank you, my friends, for joining me for this little story. I appreciate it. Both Copilot and I wrote it. We'll see you next time. I love you all. Peace, my friends.